Hello and welcome to the Dinosaw for week 9, another 7 curious interesting things I saw last week. So let's crack on. First one is OpenAI and hide and seek. This is a research paper, I think it was actually from last year, and it's really about hide and seek. So it's two teams trying to evade each other. The red little characters have to try and get to the blue characters. And it's really interesting video. Definitely have a watch of it, it's quite good fun. It's not like a sort of normal dry AI explainer video. And what you start to see is some really interesting emergent behaviours. So you're seeing here that they're using door blocking, for instance, and if they stand in exactly the right place, it means that the red people can't move the blocks out of the way as well. So they're collaborating as well. And as the video goes on, there are stranger and stranger and more interesting behaviours. They start surfing on blocks, they start jumping out of the arena and doing all sorts of things. So it takes millions and millions of iterations for them to learn this stuff. So it's really worth having a look at, and quite fun as well. Deepfake Tom Cruise. So this is a video that did the rounds on TikTok and then on YouTube and then on Twitter. And this is an actor then using deepfake technologies to pretend to be Tom Cruise. And lots of people saying, oh, this is amazing, is this really Tom Cruise? And if you know what you're looking for, you can spot the signs. The voice is maybe a little bit off, but if you look on the right hand side of this video, you'll see that the glasses disappear just as it goes over Tom Cruise's mouth, for instance. So it's those little things that aren't quite there yet, but they're minute. There's also lots of services out there that are deepfake detectors, and if you run it through that, it spots it a mile off. So we're almost getting to the point where it's only really the deepfake AIs that can actually spot the deepfakes. A lot of people saying that's clearly not Tom Cruise, his legs are too tall and all sorts of things. So yeah, deepfakes are getting to the point now where we can't really distinguish them. So it might be time to try and arm yourself with an AI to spot them. Twitter have unveiled super follows to much derision on Twitter itself. So this allows a tweeter to charge people to follow them or to follow the certain tweets. So it's very similar to essentially Twitch or Patreon, except those sorts of things. So what you can do is you can charge people, and as the mock-up here shows you, it might be $4.99 a month, for instance, for each person you want this from. So it could start to rack up pretty quickly, but for that you can get, for instance, supporters badges, you could subscribe to their newsletters, exclusive content, and access to further community, those sorts of things. So broadly speaking is who do you know on Twitter that will be worth paying $5 a month to see their tweets. There are also lots of other things, or there's one other thing they actually unveiled, which was actually groups, so that you can actually create groups around like-minded people. But there have been quite a few of these sorts of things in recent months. For instance, you might remember audio tweets and fleets that kind of had a big fanfare and went nowhere. But this one is going to make Twitter money, so they will probably defend this one. The Digital Earth Project. So this is the EU have pledged to be carbon neutral by 2050, and to do that they need to make some more informed choices. So to do that, they've kicked off a huge project with millions of euros of funding behind this to create a digital Earth. So yes, you can have weather patterns, you can have you know, what each town or city is pumping out in pollution, for instance, GDP of each nation. But what they then want to do is put a huge amount more data back into this model, so they can see how technology use or transportation, those sorts of things, will affect the climate of the future, the oceans, all sorts of things like that. So there is a mild irony in this, that it will take 20,000 GPUs to make this work, which is 20 megawatts of power. But they've said they're going to obviously look at how they're going to power that and put it in some sort of carbon neutral place, or where it can be powered with minimal fuss. But yeah, so that's interesting. I can only imagine in the future where there is a fully amazing digital twin of the Earth, making making all sorts of decisions for us in the future. Basically, the digital twin said it was good, so we did it, kind of thing. This is amazing. So this is obviously the Perseverance Mars mission, and when it landed, it had this slightly funky parachute, as you can see. Now, originally the parachute had checkerboards on it, and when the scientists were developing it, and I think this parachute, correct me if I'm wrong, was actually made in Devon in the UK, I think. However, when they were actually developing the parachute, when it opens, they had cameras on it and it had checkerboards on it, and they had to try and figure out how it was opening and how it's performing. So it is actually sort of, it is practical having these markings on a parachute. However, they thought they'd have a bit of fun with it. They had to do all of the due diligence on it, that it wasn't going to, you know, the die, for instance, wasn't going to cause any sort of failures or things like that. So there's an amazing story behind this. However, when they released this, they didn't say anything about it. Apparently there were only 6 people who knew about this gag. So what they did is they launched it, or when it launched, it took somebody 2 hours to actually figure this out. And there was a systems engineer called Ian Clark, and apparently he was on a video call with his dad trying to figure this stuff out, and figured it out. What it actually says is "Dare mighty things." That's what the middle thing says, which is actually a quote from President Roosevelt, which I think is the 26th president of the United States, roughly 1900 to 1909 or 10 or something like that. So 100 and something years ago. Anyway, it has a great speech. So it's actually worth reading that speech. It's a good innovation speech if you're into that sort of thing. And then around the outside, it also had the longitude and latitude of the, I think it was actually the visitor centre at the Jet Propulsion Laboratory. So you've basically got a really cool quote and the location if you do want to go and visit NASA. In a parachute, there were lots of other things, by the way, on the Perseverance rover. There were lots of little kind of pictures and things. If you actually look at the pictures, it's really interesting. Wearable power generators, or TEGs. I love TEGs. They're thermoelectric thermoelectric generators, basically. So they need a difference in temperature, i.e. body temperature to air, for instance, to start generating electricity. However, this new one has got a huge amount, because they've stacked it up in little fins, is one of the most efficient yet. So for every 1 centimetre squared, i.e. 1 centimetre by 1 centimetre, it can generate 1 volt, which is amazing. And you can join them together like the sort of Lego blocks, is their analogy, to create more and more and more. Now, these are a little bit weird. Yes, you can put them as a ring, or they can sit on your arm, or maybe have them as fake eyebrows or something like that. However, it will generate electricity, and therefore you can self-generate electricity for things like pacemakers or implants, those sorts of things. It has another couple of extra tricks up its sleeve. It's on this kind of interesting substrate, the yellow stuff. If you then put it in water, it will dissolve and all the pieces fall apart, so you can recycle them. And also, if you do cut it, it actually bonds itself back together, so it's healable. It takes something like an hour and a half, and it will kind of join itself back together, which is pretty cool. So if you're interested in TEGs, then check this one out. And I think finally, my son is awesome at the Rubik's Cube. I never got it. I just don't understand people who do Rubik's Cube stuff. Apparently it's quite easy when you know how. I've just never done it. I'm not wired that way, and I envy people who are. Now, there have been these before. There's, for instance, the Go Cube, I think is a couple of years old, if not a year old. They're connected cubes. So they have all the gubbins inside them to register what you're actually doing with it. And therefore it can then show it real time on your phone, and therefore if it knows what configuration each side is, it can then show you how to solve it, and eventually teach you how to solve the Rubik's Cube. So these are about $60, and it's also sort of spawning a whole sort of competition, because these are now connected. People can, I think Red Bull had a competition for Rubik's Cube solving, but essentially, yeah, if you've got one of these things, you can register how quickly it solved, and therefore the app will then put you on a leaderboard, etc. So really cool. Might think of getting one, so I can finally say I've done it without using a screwdriver. And with that, we are done. Hopefully you enjoyed that, and I will see you next week.